Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yes, it is. What is up, my friends? Welcome into it. Hey, so great to have you today. It's a Monday. It's a beautiful week. It's Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo to you if you celebrate that. I may or may not have to have some tacos or a torta or maybe an adult beverage mixed with tequila later on this evening. Why? Because, by golly, we have to celebrate, and it's just another reason to celebrate. So that being said, happy Cinco de Mayo to you if that's what you celebrate. Welcome into the show. So great to have you for a Monday today, broadcasting right out of the heart of the nation in Wichita, Kansas, on our flagship radio station. But we are all over the country, multiple radio stations and TV, live streaming, podcasting. However you watch or listen to us, welcome aboard.
Do it live!
Your Millennial General reporting for duty like we do every single day. Here on the show, bottom of the hour, we have Stan Ridgley on the program. He is the author of the latest book, DEI Exposed. We've had him on the show before. We're going to talk about the latest. There is now apparently a DEI entrenching of the identity politics of certain universities. In fact, some colleges are taking it to an entirely another level where they're doing summits known as the the Doubling Down on DEI Summit. That happening at Drexel University with sponsoring by the DEI Double Down Summit event, filing for civil rights complaints against DEI initiatives and so on and the other. So they're apparently trying to really put up this wall, even though it's now against the code for the Department of Education. And Donald Trump has talked about cutting federal funding to these universities if they continue on with DEI. But they're so ingrained with their identity politics, they have to hold on to it as tight as possible. So we will get to that here in just a little bit. I have noticed, and there's a new awareness, at least for me. Maybe it's very evident to you. I don't know. I usually don't try to mingle with the other side of the aisle. I enjoy conversation, and if people are educated enough to have a coherent conversation and not just ramble on about regular talking points, I love having conversations with those on the other side of the aisle. But what I have been encountering recently has been the lack of an intelligent conversation, and it really breaks my heart because I really, truly do want to have a fun dialogue. What I mean by that is, first and foremost, in the What's Trending story of the day.
What's trending today?
I, again, have to give Donald Trump the credit for the trolling that he does. We are making the shirts as we speak for us to be able to buy and purchase on our Voice of Reason program website, which you can go to at HoosierReason.com, sign up there, become a Hoosierholics, and we will have a shop on there relatively soon. We are making the shirts that say, "We get it, Trump control." Because Donald Trump is the ultimate troll, and it's fun to watch them melt down. Did you see the fact that they have spent an entire segment on Meet the Press over the weekend with a tour with Donald Trump, a sit-down one-on-one interview with Donald Trump? They spent an entire decent amount of time talking about Donald Trump potentially running for a third term in office. Why? Because he's been wearing hats that say Trump 2028.
Trump Organization is selling hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. Mm-hmm. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican, to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
All right, so it's a hilarious response because it, again, keeps the troll going. That's why he's the ultimate troll. It's not just like, oh, you got me. It was kind of a joke, but it got you talking about it. No, he didn't do that. Like, ha, you're funny. No, he kept it going. I don't really know about the Constitution. Maybe it says it, maybe it doesn't. Now, that being said, we know the Constitution. We put it in there as an amendment that they can now only have 2 terms because that was after the Democrats, progressives, socialists said, hey, we haven't completed our agenda yet, so we're just going to keep on going. And that's why you had FDR die in office when he had 4 terms under his belt because he didn't want to relinquish the power, and he was a crazy, wild, radical socialist. And finally, we said, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that any longer. So Donald Trump keeping the trolling going. I don't know if it says it or not, but I'm getting a whole lot of support for it. But I don't know that I even need more than 4 years because I have a big agenda and we're going to get it all done. It's great. It's the ultimate troll. Now, the reason I bring it up, I know. You say, Andy, it's a troll, it's a joke. Why do you continue to focus attention on it? Well, I bring it up because this weekend was the proper evidence of why it's so much fun watching Donald Trump troll. I played some of the audio on the national show on Saturday. I'm not going to play any of it today, although I do have some more audio clips that I have not gotten to that I want to talk about at some point. We don't have time for it today, but the ongoing nationwide anti-Donald Trump protests have been happening all over the country. I got the chance to go to one this weekend that was based here in Wichita. Roughly 200 to 300 people show up to it. It's insane. They've been showing up every single Saturday on the same corner of the street in downtown every weekend since the election in November. And I give them credit for being consistent and actually being diehard. I don't know how they have any other life outside of this. And I got to be honest, I wouldn't want to spend my entire weekend out there protesting when I have work to do, I have family to spend time with, I have extracurriculars I want to enjoy. I have things to do. I wouldn't want to sit there and just wave a flag and hold a sign and use a bullhorn and yell at cars as they drive on by and hope that they honk at you. That to me is completely unproductive in what I want to do. So I wouldn't do it, but I showed up this weekend. We talked to some of them, and I have to tell you that, again, the Trump derangement syndrome is absolutely insane, and they buy in to these trolls. That's why it's so funny. They buy in to these trolls. There was a sign there that said, we need to prevent Donald Trump from having a third term. It's hilarious. It's absolutely insane. But the trolling is only a part of it, because as you know, they will fight against Donald Trump no matter what he does, even if they're promoting or if he's promoting the agenda that they're actually advocating for, because they just don't like Donald Trump. So no matter what he does, it's evil. And that leads us to
what's trending today.
A deeper story. And I have a few different audio clips. I don't know how many of these we're going to get to. There was a TED Talk that's been done recently. And you want to talk about the fear, the hyperbole, and the absolute hypocrisy that's going on in society right now. And this isn't just a, laugh it off, it's kind of cute, just move on. This is, you need to be concerned about what they're doing right now. Because they're setting a narrative that is making you and I look like, and I can't believe I'm going to say this word, they're making you and I look like the fascists. Making you and I look like the ultimate authoritarians. And here's what I mean. There was a TED Talk that was done recently by an individual, and I'm going to try to pronounce her last name, Carol Cadwalader, I believe. I believe she's British. She has a very thick British accent, doing a TED Talk about digital privacy, digital freedom, content on social media, and apparently not the UK's control over content on social media, but the lack of content control and silencing of freedom of speech on social media that's leading to authoritarianism that's led by the Trump administration and the American government. Let that sink in for just a moment. Not controlling the content is authoritarian and is going to control every aspect of your life. She was talking about how she's been going through legal battles and how someone tried to silence her and do something. So now she's turning it on the U.S. government and how we're somehow, again, this is not coming from activists in the United States, coming from outside of the U.S. about how the U.S. government and Russia are working together to create something even deeper than what they say is the oligarchy of America.
It's a coup. I know you probably don't want to hear that, and especially here, but we can't fight it if we can't see it, and we can't see it if we don't name it. The Russian and American presidents are now speaking the same words. They are telling the same lies. We are watching the collapse of the international order in real time, and this is just the start. Coups are like concrete. When they stop moving, they set. It is already later than we think. This image, some of you in this room might know these people.
Okay, I want to stop right there because she's showing an image on the screen of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump. You know, obviously these wealthy individuals, these businessmen that are now controlling the world.
I call it tech bros in hostage situations. It's a message to you. This is Putin's playbook. He allows a business elite to make untold riches in exchange for absolute loyalty.
Absolute loyalty. I want to put this into perspective for you for just a moment. The bleeding hearts, the ones with Trump derangement syndrome, which, by the way, we have our newsletter out. It came out today. If you did not get it, then the hell's wrong with you, man? Sign up for the newsletter at who'syourreason.com. Our blog is also up on the website, so you can read the blog directly on the website at Who's Your Reason. It came out today talking about how we battle the illness of the Trump derangement syndrome. It is a virus. It is a true physical illness. Like when you go to the doctor and you say, I have a virus like the flu, I need some medication. That's what Trump derangement syndrome has become. It has become a true mental illness that we need to find some kind of remedy for. We talk about that in our latest blog, and you can find that on the website. This goes beyond this, because those individuals that are infected, so to speak, with the Trump derangement syndrome, the TDS, they will buy into this and say that, again, the American government, Donald Trump, the puppet of Putin, which is what they've called him, colluding with the Russian government to get into office, that they're now colluding to try and take over social media and the digital age with what she's calling now a digital coup. I want to, again, put this into perspective for you. This is coming from a lady that's living in a nation, the United Kingdom, the UK, Britain, whatever, England, that if an American like myself walked onto the soil of London right now, flew over to the UK and flew into London, and I landed, because of the content I have on my social media, law enforcement there could arrest me and throw me in jail because I spread quote-unquote misinformation. We talk about identity politics because of the stances I have on conservative values, because we're labeled as quote-unquote anti-immigration activists. We don't support immigration for some reason, which is completely untrue. But they would, to their laws now, they would have the right to arrest me and throw me in jail as a tourist if I stand on UK soil. There was a 60 Minutes interview, and we've played some of the audio, I don't know, a month or two back, of German attorneys that say that freedom of content, freedom of expression on social media is authoritarian. Elon Musk is an authoritarian and a dictator by allowing the freedom of speech, because as an attorney, they are actually rounding people up, charging them, throwing them in prison for having certain beliefs on social media that they are deeming as harmful to society, as racist, as hate speech, quote unquote, defining on whatever hate speech is to their definition, and putting people in jail because of that. And the ones that are not doing that are the fascists. And coming from a company like Germany, I think they know a little bit about what fascism and Nazism actually looks like. And they say that they're fighting fascism by getting rid of hate speech online, because the hate speech that's allowed online is spreading the fascism and Nazism. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk are the ones that are actually promoting it. Does this make any sense to anybody at all? Because my brain hurts. But this is what they're calling is now the digital coup, is that because we allow content and free speech, we're allowing the fascism and Nazism to happen. So in order to fight Nazism and fascism, which is only allowing a particular certain ideal on, in the realm of conversation, that in order to fight that, you have to silence the people that have a different opinion than you, that's creating quote unquote hate speech and anti-immigrant policy. Yeah, that's the world we're living in. People are going to buy it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. When reason meets radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, it is. Welcome back into it. 24 minutes past the hour. Radio, TV, live streaming, podcasting. However you hang out with us, especially on a Monday, as we set that tone, we carpe diem all over this place, baby. It's what we're all about, and it's so great to have you. So the reason we focus on the TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome, the unhinged left, is not because they're influential. I don't really care. We are going to ram through our agenda as quickly and as hard as possible, and I can't wait to pop the popcorn and watch them melt down and lose their minds, because it's honestly a little bit, come on, you know it, you can admit it, it's a little bit entertaining, right? And when they do melt down,
we're all gonna die because of you!
You kind of smirk a little bit. Now, I'm not one to relish in someone else's pain, but when you're that gullible, and the problem is that especially talking about the digital side of things, we have to take the layers of the onion just a little bit deeper, right? If we are on the verge of massive artificial intelligence, massive AI, we're already starting to see the picture, the meltdown from the other side in the media about Donald Trump sharing a picture of him as the Pope. How dare you think you're the Pope? Do you really think that you're going to be the Pope? Why would you share something like that? It's funny. It's called a joke. But the ones that are so emotionally triggered about everything, the ones that despise the man for just being the man and want to dehumanize the man because they don't think that he's an actual human being, and therefore it's okay to eliminate him because of the fact that he's not an actual human being, and therefore it's justified in eliminating someone like that, which is why you see people that still have decapitated heads of Trump, which I did see at the rally in Wichita, Kansas, out of all places, at this rally over the weekend. Absolutely insane. You can check it out on social media. Went semi-viral with this picture because it's insane that people are still doing this. But because they're so emotionally unhinged, they're so out of touch with reality and common sense, they will fall for anything. And because of the digital age and AI and the direction that we're going, it will be harder to discern what is truth and what is not truth online. And that is why to them, they think that in order to fight fascism and Nazism, you have to be a fascist and a Nazi by silencing content because it could be fake news.
You are fake news.
Yeah, so they're fighting what they say is now, again, the oligarchy, which is what we saw with the tour with Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is because they're fighting the evil, super rich individuals that are now controlling the government like they haven't been controlling the government since, I don't know, forever.
Some people are calling this oligarchy, but it's actually bigger than that.
Oh.
These are global platforms. It's broligarchy.
Broligarchy? Is that what they call it? Broligarchy? Is that what she said?
It's broligarchy.
I don't know what that means.
There is an alignment of interests that runs through Silicon Valley to what is now a coming autocracy. It's a type of power that the world has never seen before.
Yeah, okay. And they go on to talk about some of the data collection, which is a major concern, and I completely agree with her that they should not be collecting a lot of data. Here's the issue with all of that. Is it a Republican Donald Trump being a Russian Putin idea that there's data collection and that there's not a lot of privacy on social media? I thought that was happening a long time before. And in fact, we had tech industry leaders coming out saying that if Kamala Harris were to become president of the United States, God forbid, if that actually happened, then we would have an artificial intelligence that had one side regurgitated into it to teach you about certain issues, that George Washington was like a black Indian person or something. I don't know, whatever they wanted to do for identity politics of the day. That artificial intelligence would have been controlled by one or two companies in the U.S. that would have had a specific agenda, a propaganda machine arm that would have educated the young generation, and there would be no truth, no common sense, and no dialogue whatsoever. It would have been absolute control. And oh, by the way, if you have social media and a conservative, if you're a gun owner, if you tried to be in the media, if you tried to do a podcast, it would be eliminated. Gone. Finito. Like 2020 when you question things, but 10 times as worse. That's what we were up against. But somehow, according to these TED Talks, we're the Nazi fascists for allowing freedom of speech online and letting it be the Wild West the way it's supposed to be.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
If you had to do it all over again, would you vote for Donald Trump again, yes or no?
Yes, I would. Now, in the future, I am not a diehard Democrat or diehard Republican. If there were a Democratic candidate who was more aligned for me, then I would vote Democrat.
If you go back in time, would you vote for Donald Trump, yes or no?
Yes.
I think I might know the answer on this thing.
She said yes. It's immediately yes. No, I'm sorry.
If you had to do it all over again, Would you vote for Donald Trump? Yes or no?
1,000% absolutely yes.
Oh my gosh. So Van Jones on CNN doing a sit-down interview with three black individuals, because apparently that matters in the identity politics, who had fought against Donald Trump, ended up voting for Donald Trump, and now say absolutely 1,000% yes, I would vote for Donald Trump again. The best look of it was actually Anderson Cooper when they flash back to him. The the starstruck, gasp, couldn't believe what he was hearing face that he showed when they went back to him was absolutely hilarious. So well done. Well done, CNN. You're doing great over there. And that leads us to, especially with the identity politics that we're still battling right now, we're trying to rid society of the identity politics, the DEI initiatives around the country that seem to just be held on to with absolute desperation from the other side. And that's where we go to our next guest here.
What's trending today?
Why is it such a state of desperation to hold on to this mindset, especially in higher education, as he is the author of the latest book, DEI Exposed, How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education. Really happy to have back on the show Mr. Stan Ridgley. Stan, how are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be back, and looking forward to talking.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you as well. It seems like they're just desperate to hang on to this mindset. I've realized the progressives, identity politics was all they had for the longest time. Now that we're trying to get rid of it, they really don't know what else to cling on to right now, do they?
No, they don't. They have identity politics is basically a narcissistic view when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Native American. That's what the most important thing is about my identity, about who I am, not my parentage, not my beliefs, not my how I grew up, nothing else, just my race. And that is basically all the left has, all the prog left has. And once you take that away, they really have no platform. They really have no agenda, and I'm delighted to see what's happening in higher education. I teach at Drexel University, and I had to suffer through this nonsense for the past 5 years or so, and the turnaround has been magnificent, let me tell you.
Yeah, well, the fact that you're at Drexel, I know that there's a new piece. Apparently, Drexel University had held a double down on DEI summit because they want to just cling on to this as long as possible. I know that right now that obviously the initiative has passed for the policy under the Department of Education. You're not allowed to have DEI or affirmative action type of policy at a university. You're going to lose federal funding. I know that's being challenged in the courts right now. But why would this university hold on to this so tightly?
Well, I have to tell you, I couldn't believe it myself. And I walked in and saw the sign. It's in my building, for goodness sake. I took a picture of the sign, double down on DEI summit in the building. So I went in, took another picture of the sign, went up to the second floor. There were a bunch of people there. They wouldn't let me in because I hadn't signed up for the program. Took pictures of them. I complained to the civil rights hotline here on campus to say, hey, this is going to endanger the entire university. Who is doing this? Why are you? They say, we don't know anything about that. We don't know anything about that.
Of course.
No. Of course, within half an hour of my making that report, the ad for it on the web went down. You couldn't get to it. The signs were removed from the outside the building and inside the building. Basically hunkered down. It turns out it was a private event that was kind of sponsored by a consulting group that the university employs. In a roundabout way, they tried to say, well, it's not our event. So that's how they got away with it. But, this leads to what I tell students, what I tell faculty. The way to root this stuff out and to keep this kind of thing, to keep from playing whack-a-mole, if you see something, say something. Report it directly to the Office of Civil Rights if the people on the campus won't give you any kind of satisfaction. And I found this to be very satisfying and to be a way of continuing to keep the pressure on.
Yeah, so essentially, like you said, so it was a private group that was bringing it on, but it was a consulting firm that the university uses that held the event. So it wasn't, they can say it was hands off from the university, but it's an organization that they regularly use for the university that came in and put this event on.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's Cousin O'Connor. Cousin O'Connor, that's the name of the group. I'm not going to mince words or hide anything. It's a consulting firm that the university employs.
Yeah.
Is employing it right now, and they're the ones who sponsored it. So, this kind of roundabout way of getting these things onto the campus, satisfying the constituencies here, you got to keep an eye out. You got to be ready to speak up and get this stuff rooted out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Now, I would have a different opinion on it if it was, say, the college Democrats that brought a group on to speak to talk about the issue, just like they would do with a Turning Point USA or a Charlie Kirk or something. If they brought it in. But it's just wild. Is this maybe the future of how universities are going to try and get around this? Is say, well, we don't have anything to do with it, but the big money behind the university's putting it on, so I guess we can't do anything about it. We just got to let it happen.
Well, I do think that getting around this is simply going to be renaming it. It's like again, whack-a-mole, or it's like a old wine in new bottles, bad old wine in new bottles. They keep renaming it to trying to get around the letter of the law, get around the letter of the executive order that's been laid out. But I'll tell you, the Department of Education is a lot smarter than that. They basically said in their letters to the universities around the country, you can't go renaming it. We're going to be looking at this. You can't simply give someone a new title like they did at Harvard. They got a plagiarist in charge of their DEI program. They ended the DEI program, and they're calling it community service or something like that. They gave the woman who's in charge of it, a plagiarist, her name is Charleston, they gave her a new title. So everything's the same except the titles. And look, they're going to have to do an investigation, of course, to make sure that they're not pursuing some sort of violations of civil rights law or equal protection clause at Harvard. Yeah, got to keep the pressure on.
Yeah, we got to keep the pressure on overall. We're talking with Dr. Stan Ridgley. He's the author of the book DEI Exposed, How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education, also with Drexel University. Overall, outside of these incidents that they're trying to sneak in behind the scenes, around the corner, trying to bend the rules just a little bit, overall, have you seen a change in maybe the culture at universities? Have you seen a change in the mindset of students at universities? Are we starting to see the difference compared to what we were before, when everything was about identity politics, everything was about the victimhood status? Are we starting to see maybe that cultural shift now of the young generation?
I think we are. Generation Z is farther to the right than the previous generation, the millennials. Much farther to the right. And this is from a Harvard poll, by the way. I should say that the students that I talk with, it's almost like kind of a sense of relief that you don't have to play these kinds of games. You don't have to, I will tell you something very satisfying. I saw in Inside Higher Ed today an article about how the diversity officers on college campuses are feeling hard-pressed because no one's paying them any attention. They can't get anyone on the phone. Their programs are falling apart. They don't know if they're going to be fired the next day. That is a sea change in how this noxious doctrine was treated, even just a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how fast these things change. And I'll tell you, they can't get anyone on the phone because the bureaucrats who hired them, who signed on to this, don't want anything to do with it now that it's a problem. No one wants to be the guy who hired these DEI folks. No one wants to have to answer, that was me.
Yeah.
So I think it's good news all around, Ed.
That is really good news. What is the response that you get? I mean, being a professor, working at these universities and being surrounded, I'm assuming, by the majority of people on the other side of the aisle, knowing what you talk about, knowing your books, what's the response that you get from college campuses?
Well, people I deal with are very nice to my face, okay? They're very nice. But I hear I've heard back channel stuff that they call me a far right winger. I'm a middle of the road kind of guy, I just maintain a traditional view of the university as a place of learning, a place of progress, humane values, scientific method, that kind of thing. Don't proselytize your students. Don't try to play your politics. Don't endorse activism. That's me.
But everything that you just mentioned now with the scientific method, with actually getting back to learning, that apparently is a right-wing radical stance now, isn't it? Because nowadays it's supposed to be nothing but just a social experiment.
It is. There's a whole discipline on the campuses against science, and it's called science studies. Now, not a thing. I'm serious. It's like gender studies, black studies. It's like environment, peace studies. There's a whole group of people. They're engaged in science. Now, of course, no scientists, actual scientists, are in the movement.
Right.
They're not. There are no scientists studying science. Doing science studies. So there's this anti-intellectualist, anti-scientific group, and they always say, well, indigenous knowledges are just as important as science. And you're familiar with this, I'm sure, where you have to get a land acknowledgement before an event. Our university sits on the traditional lands of the Lakota tribe, we tip our hats to the traditional that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
And they believe in things like the medicine wheel, the talking stick, the spirit walker, the skin walker, those kinds of things. And those kinds of things are supposed to be on par with science. Of course, that's nonsense. It's absurd. And we're slowly expunging that kind of thing as well. Back to a thing you mentioned a moment ago. Of course, I think it's wonderful that we can have, study DEI. We can study critical race theory as a subject of study in a particular area and say, hey, here's what they say, here's what the critics say, and come to our own conclusion. That's fine. You can sponsor a speaker on the campus, and that's fine. That's wonderful.
Right.
But the idea of the university endorsing a particular point of view and then giving its imprimatur and funding it and saying, well, this is the way it is, that's something altogether different.
It's a whole other level.
That's what the administration. Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah, Stan, you and I could talk forever. I know you got to get to class here in just a few minutes, so we got to let you go. Got to take a hard break here. It is DEI Exposed. Go check out the book. We love the conversation. I'm glad we're starting to see the shift in culture there. Stan, keep up the fight. Let's get you back on and do it again real soon.
Sounds great. Take care now.
Appreciate it very much. Stan Ridgley, lots more coming up on the show. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. America's safe space for common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yes, it is. What's up? Welcome back into it. It is the Voice of Reason. I'm Andy Hoosier. Wrapping things up today for a Monday. Thanks again to Dr. Stan Ridgley coming on the program. DEI Exposed is his book. As we look at some of the universities, the cultural shift we're seeing, and to me, that sounded like relatively good news, and we'll talk about some more of that in just a minute. Want to tell you about my friends over at Americans for Prosperity. As you know, we are getting down to the wire. Congress continues to work on that big, beautiful package, that reconciliation bill that's going to have a lot of stuff in it. One of those in particular, though, is going to be that extension, if not the permanentizing or the codifying of the Trump tax cuts 1.0 in the previous administration that would make sure that if they do expire at the end of this year, we could see an average of $2,000 increase in our taxes for a family. That's not okay with me. So we need to make sure those Trump tax cuts get codified and permanentized. I know the other side says it's about the millionaires and the billionaires, but I'm pretty sure that I saw a tax cut. And I want to continue to see a tax cut, which is a crazy, wild concept, right? So we need to make sure it's done, and you need to make sure that you know who to call, who to put pressure on, because there are still some Republicans that are waffling in the wind right now, and you got to make sure that you talk to their offices and make sure that they listen to you. That's how you get a hold of them, by going to protectprosperity.com, protectprosperity.com. It's super easy. You type in your email, you get the information, you know exactly how you can be part of the movement. AFP has spent millions of dollars knocking on doors and letting people know what's going on with the Trump tax cuts and the big, beautiful reconciliation package with our friends over at Americans for Prosperity. Go to their website, protectprosperity.com. So Stan Ridgley mentioned something there in that last interview, and we appreciate him. Great guest. We'll have him back on the show again soon. He mentioned something that I was not aware of. And as you know, universities are a way to expand your mind, right? And I get it. To a degree, it's about a social experiment. But we went a little bit too far, which is why you had those that are focusing so much on identity politics. But he had mentioned a department that I was not aware of, some new classes that you can study, the studying of science, or the Department of Science Studies, or whatever he called it, where they're not scientists that are working under the science department to do scientific method type of experiments, but it's people studying the art of science. And that's probably why we lost the ability of doing the basic scientific method, right? And that's, I know, that's a complete disaster. So for those that don't know what the scientific method is, we've talked about it because this is where we lost it during the climate change argument. Is it's no longer, I have a hypothesis. Remember this in science class in high school, middle school? You had a hypothesis. I believe that if I put light through a blue filter, that it's going to show a blue light on the other side of the filter. That is my hypothesis. That would be my guess of what would happen. I'm going to perform a scientific method. I'm going to hold a flashlight up. I'm going to put a blue screen up, and then I'm going to look and see what the other side is, doing that scientific method, and voila, I can see the end result, and then I can write about it. Yes, my hypothesis was correct, or no, it wasn't correct. It's very simple. It's called the scientific method. Instead, we've transitioned quite a bit with the government that controls science now to say, hey, we need a study that has this end result. Not to figure out whether it's real or not, but we want this end result so that way we can say that science proves 99.9% of man-made climate change is caused by global whatever. So they give the grant money to the university, they do a study that comes out with that end result, and then they say, look at that, science proves it. And that's not really what science is about. Well, apparently now we have this study of science. And as he mentioned, now it's not about the science because scientists aren't involved in it, but it's more about we need to study every aspect of the world, that science is relative, that facts are relative because based on culture, based on understandings. And look, that to me is a fascinating conversation. That needs to be done in the study of theology, or maybe a study on, I don't know, the behavior of people, or a mythology class or something like that. Because if you're going to talk about like what he said with skinwalkers, I'm all about that conversation. Let's talk about the Native Americans and their theory on skinwalkers, which are ETs or Bigfoot or whatever it could be. That's not a study of science. That's a study of mythology. That's a study on conspiracies. That's a study on traditional belief systems. That's a study on what this culture believed at that time and learning about different cultures. That is where that belongs. It doesn't belong in a study of science. And, well, you can say that there's light going through a blue filter, but if they don't believe it to be blue, then is it really blue at the end of the day? That's not where we... Yeah, I know. It broke my brain, too. I get it. My brain hurts after thinking about it that deeply, but that's where we've gotten to, and that would explain why we've gotten to a part of culture that says that a man and a woman are not really men and women, and that biology and science doesn't matter, because they brought the psychology into it to say that the science of the human anatomy is irrelevant. It's about what you think at that time, and that is why society began to collapse, and we have to get things back on track, especially in our higher education. That does it for us today. We'll see you back on the radio tomorrow. Bye.